We wanted to have a chat about Tom Bombadil this evening. Who is he, and what is he, and just what the hell is he?
Even by the standards of a fairy story, he's weird. Like, nobody actually knows who he is, where he came from. Not even his own wife can answer that question, really.
It is a natural pacifist view, which always arises in the mind when there is a war. But the view of Rivendell seems to be that it is an excellent thing to have represented, but that there are in fact things with which it cannot cope, and upon which its existence nonetheless depends.
It's just, he does things because they're the right thing to do.
Yeah.
In his mind, anyway.
And one of the right things to do is please his lady. Another right thing to do in his mind is to have a mowed lawn, which is amazing. and a trimmed hedge. And I read that, I was like, wait, he has a lawn?
And a hedge.
So fair was the grace of Goldberry, and so merry and odd the caperings of Tom, that in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance. You know, the two becoming one in marriage, I think, is represented quite well with that. What are we drinking tonight, Ethan?
Well, seeing as how we're recording this on the eve of St. Joseph, which also happens to be my wife's birthday, I am drinking The Quiet Man.
Very good.
My wife bought this bottle yesterday, and it's already half gone. First bought for the Feast of St. Patrick, and now consumed for the Feast of St. Joseph. For the eve of St. Joseph, anyway.
And you are not a drunkard, but you are
My favorite Irish whiskey.
You are a heavyweight, if I say so.
Irish and Scottish.
You got that going for you. You got that going for you. I'm attempting in my wee way to match you. I thought about celebrating St. Patrick's Day, which we're recording this the day after, with a good British beer, because I have a British last name, and that would have been funny. But I decided to lay off of that, and I've gone with Tales of Gold, which you can't argue with. It is Tales of Gold.
No. I mean, if you really would have wanted to make a point, you should have found a Welsh beer.
I could. I could go find one.
Although St. Patrick was either Welsh or Scottish. But most likely he was Welsh.
Scottish would be easier, but I have an idea in mind now. We'll see if it stays in my mind, but there's more St. Patrick's Days coming up. And also the Welsh flag. The Welsh flag is amazing.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the best of all the flags of the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Scotland's second. But
Scotland's flag of the well, there's the Cross of St. Andrew, and then there's also the red background with the golden lion.
They have two?
I believe there's two.
I need to see the other one then.
But yes, the blue and white Cross of St. Andrew is just
very good. It's very good. Just like this beer. We've talked about it before. We've given them multiple free reviews. My free review of them this week is that we've given them free reviews in the past.
So go and find those.
Yeah.
So I think there's a short somewhere where we talk fairly in-depth about Tales of Gold and how it's probably just the best beer, period. Mm-hmm. Buttered gold. I'm just going to keep saying it.
It is.
If this helps at all, New Holland's Dragon's Milk Crimson Keep is the only red ale that I like. And I like it a lot. So if that tells you something about their quality, in general, I think it's the bourbon barrels, to be honest. I think they've got their thing. We're just going to make our beer and we're going to throw it and age it in a bourbon barrel for a year.
Whatever they do, they know what they're doing.
You can't really go wrong when doing that. Like, I recently had a scotch, Glenmorangie.
Okay.
Was brought to my nephew's baptismal party by my nephew's godfather. And Glenmorangie is aged or finished in American bourbon barrels. And it gave it a very familiar taste. Honestly, it was really good.
Vanilla a bit in there? When you add vanilla to things, it's usually better. You know what I mean?
I sat there holding the glass and I said, yeah, I'd pay $50 a bottle for that.
Might need to get some. But yeah, I have told the proprietors of my favorite liquor establishment here in town that they should get Tales of Gold in and sell it. They have the standard Dragon's Milk, but they do not have Tales of Gold. And granted, they're a small shop. I mean, this is far smaller than Mackadoodles in your neck of the woods. But I hope they do it. And
Which
I wonder if
I
I
go
should
there
just,
because they have the best prices. There is actually a local liquor store that's right on my path home from work.
mm-hmm.
That is very tempting to me.
It's culture, right? But yeah, I would be tempted to buy a 4-pack of Tales of Gold and then just bring it to that liquor place and just drop it on the counter and be like, "This is my gift to you. Now just try some, and now stock it for next time, please."
Yeah, you're 4 top guys. I want you to try it, and then stock it.
Yeah, and you can try it in the back.
Oh, and here's the Crimson Keep.
Yeah. So they would just try it in the back too. They brought me to the back to try some rye before.
I need to go to this place.
You do. It turns out you're visiting in June. You may have to make a trip.
Yes, that's true. That may also be a cause for an impromptu recording. Perhaps a short one.
Perhaps, yes.
And your visit next month
Indeed.
may also have to be cause for impromptu recording.
Maybe. With mine, I have more time to figure out how to do that, technically. But we shall see. We shall see. But anyway, we wanted to have a chat about Tom Bombadil this evening.
Yes, we did.
And I could say more on that, and I'm about to say more on that, in terms of, well, who is he, and, yeah, who is he, and what is he, and just what the hell is he? I think that's a fair question that everybody can ask, and everybody has been trying to ask ever since Lord of the Rings came out. So we're going to make our own attempt at it right here.
I first suggested this topic because in my current read-through of the Fellowship, I had just read The Old Forest and In the House of Tom Bombadil and Fog on the Barrow Downs.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of went, you know what, let's talk about him because he's weird. Even by the standards of a fairy story, he's weird. Like, nobody actually knows who he is, where he came from. Not even his own wife can answer that question, really.
Mm-hmm.
Not even Tolkien, who wrote the story, can really answer that question. And even though the professor himself did say in a letter that there is no use philosophizing over Tom Bombadil, while I respect Tolkien more than possibly any other intellectual and author in history, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to very judiciously ignore his determination and philosophize about Tom Bombadil.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fitting that we start then with Tolkien's own words from one of his letters about what Tom Bombadil actually is. Although I'll preface this by saying, for our audience's sake, I presume that your starting point is that you know Lord of the Rings enough that you know who he is, that he's this very interesting character in the woods that has a lot of strange powers, right?
Or at the very least that you know, oh, he's the guy with the blue coat and the yellow boots.
Yep. He put the ring on and he didn't disappear.
In fact, the ring disappeared.
Yeah, he made
the ring disappear. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he hands it back to Frodo like it's nothing. So, like, he's clearly not one of us. He's been around forever. But, like, what in the world is he?
He's clearly not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gandalf is a Maya. Gandalf is a literal angel. And he can't take the ring. Mm-hmm. Because of the power it holds and the temptation that would have for him. So, whatever Tom Bombadil is, he is so disconnected from the corruption of the earth that the ring has absolutely no effect on him whatsoever. It doesn't even turn him invisible.
Yeah. Yeah, Frodo, after he gets the ring back from Bombadil, he's, like, suspicious. Like, wait, did you, like, somehow swap this? So Frodo puts the ring on himself and, like, gets up to leave, and Tom's just like, hey, where are you going? Yeah. And I don't know that Tom can see him, but it wouldn't shock me.
I would be... if I were to presume to add the rules of hard magic to Tolkien's very soft magic, I would say that the rule of the ring, is that its effects are felt and noticed only by those who it actually has an effect on. If it could not turn Tom Bombadil invisible, then anyone wearing it would not be invisible to him.
There is that interesting discussion, yeah, because
the ring has no power over him. And putting the ring on and turning it invisible, technically the ring is exercising a power over everybody that would potentially see whoever it's turning it invisible. It's exercising a power over everybody around you to keep them from seeing you. But it cannot exercise that power over Tom Bombadil, because he is totally detached. He only cares about his lawn, his trees, and his wife.
Yeah.
And that's it.
In the forest, and yeah, he is an interesting fellow. If I was to give a proper introduction of the person, I would say, oh, he's like this, and he has these attributes and such. But I presume that you, the audience, know something about him to start.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go to what Tolkien says in one of his letters, and I'll just read it. And then eventually we'll get to some of the attributes that you may know of him, and some that you may not know of him. I was rereading this, that part of the Fellowship a couple days ago in preparation for this, and I was blown away by things that I was learning about him that I did not know. But, and I'll skip around in this a little bit. This is from a letter that Tolkien wrote. It's a very long letter that he wrote to somebody, and I'm just not going to flip back enough pages to find out who. Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative. I suppose he has some importance as a comment. And he represents something that I feel important, though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely. I would not, however, have left him in if he did not have some function. I might put it this way. The story is cast in terms of a good side and a bad side, beauty against ruthless ugliness, tyranny against kingship, moderated freedom with consent against compulsion that has long lost any objective save mere power, and so on. But both sides, in some degree, conservative or destructive, want a measure of control. But if you have, as it were, taken a vow of poverty, renounced control, and take your delight in things for themselves without reference to yourself, then the question of the rights and wrongs of power and control might become utterly meaningless to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the means of power quite valueless. It is a natural pacifist view, which always arises in the mind when there is a war. But the view of Rivendell seems to be that it is an excellent thing to have represented, but that there are in fact things with which it cannot cope, and upon which its existence nonetheless depends. Ultimately, only the victory of the West will allow Bombadil to continue, or even to survive. Nothing would be left for him in the world of Sauron. So that is a deep backstory to him. He is a pacifist. He is
not worth philosophizing about my foot. Tolkien just philosophized about Tom Bombadil when he said he wasn't going to do that.
Well, he tried. He didn't spend too much more time on it. And no, he is not God. There's some people that think he might be because Goldberry described him as he is, but no, he's not God. He was not Eru Ilúvatar.
Yeah, but no, she's just saying that in the sense of, oh, he's just there.
Yeah. So what is he then? He is the spirit of pacifism. He's the spirit of a forest. And not just of the forest, but of a particular area of land, a particular time and place. Why? We don't know. Tolkien doesn't know, and so we're not going to think about that too much farther. But in his domain, we can say that he is a true master of it. Even if he is not concerned with the things of the outside world, if he is not concerned with that type of power and control, he still has an immense amount of power. The way we're introduced to him is he's singing. And I think it's evident or at least evident to Tolkien nerds, potentially, that the songs that he's singing are songs of power. Or that he at least has that ability. I mean, he clearly demonstrates it when he rescues the hobbits from the Barrow-wight. Because in beautiful Tolkien-esque fashion, he rescues them with a song. He rescues them from Old Man Willow with a song. But there also, I imagine, might be some power in his songs to Goldberry. And just his simple tunes of nonsense, as the hobbits call them, when he's just faffing about and getting water lilies for his lady. There's a real beauty to that, and a real, again, power that is easily understated until its effects become very apparent to you. And in his own words, or Goldberry's words, I forget, or both, he's never been caught. He's the master. He is arguably immortal, although he could be killed. Tolkien seems to think that it's possible he could be killed. But no, he's never been caught. He is master.
Well, the elves are kind of the same way. They're immortal until they die.
Okay, fair. But Tom, at least, might be immortal, but in that sense that he really knows his place and knows it well. How much of it just because of his own nature, or how much of it because of his own choices, I don't know.
I had this thought today. Tom Bombadil is kind of the definition of the most right way of being the big fish in the small pond. But I think the way that you put it is actually more poetic and more beautiful. Like his actual domain, his domain of power is limited and is very small. But within it, he has nearly limitless power. I don't know that Bombadil would actually be much good outside of the forest, or any past the Barrow Downs, or any way past Bree.
Yeah, I think there's this moment in it's either in Cirith Ungol, or it's in the Tower of Cirith Ungol, or it's somewhere in Mordor, where either Frodo or Sam might sing that tune that he teaches the hobbits to sing, which rescues them from the Barrow Downs, or they think it. I can't remember. But for one, there's no way he can hear it. And for two, even if he could hear it and just manifest himself into that place, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense that he would have the same power there.
Yeah, he has no power. He has no authority over the place of Cirith Ungol.
Yeah.
Like, where his power is the greatest is in the Old Forest. This is... There are types of characters, we see them very often in various forms of fantasy, where your power is tied to a specific place, and the farther you get from that place, the weaker your power becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tom Bombadil is a character very much like that. His power is at its greatest in the Old Forest, at its strongest. And it starts to weaken when you get to the Barrow Downs, because you're outside of the Old Forest, you're outside of the direct perimeter of the Old Forest. My evidence for this is that in the Old Forest, when Merry and Pippin have been trapped by Old Man Willow, who is apparently rather cranky, Frodo and Sam yell for help, and Tom Bombadil comes along. And he just sort of, well, for one thing, he snaps a branch off of Old Man Willow and beats him with it, and says, "Let them go, you've had your snack." So he needs no Song of Power for Old Man Willow to obey. At any time, in any way when he uses it, if it does anything, it just lets them know that he's there. It lets the trees know that he's there. And maybe because he sings it so often, that's what solidifies his power in the forest. But in the Barrow Downs, Frodo has to sing the song to get Tom Bombadil's attention, which there's no way that any mortal ear could hear somebody singing from inside a barrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded by stone. Your sound's not getting out of there. So clearly the song is a song of power and has some summoning capabilities. But then it takes a song of power from Tom Bombadil to cast out the Barrow Wight, or to cause it to flee, or to cause it to stop, and to open the barrow. So basically, because he has to do more, his intrinsic power is slightly weakened, because he's farther away from the Old Forest.
Yeah, I think it's a decent theory. So, yeah,
it's just a theory, and that's just my observation. But it more sort of builds off of what you had said.
Mm-hmm. I have a slightly different theory, which is based on the fact that he does actually sing to Old Man Willow to let them go. And because of where precisely he leaves the four hobbits at the very end of his encounter with them, it's on the road to Bree, and at some point he's just like, nope, this is the border of my land, I'm done, I'm heading back.
Oh, so the Barrow Downs are actually within his land.
Yeah, and they're also basically his backyard, or in the background of his backyard.
I see.
So
but
all
it could
we're
just
really
be because because of what the Barrow Wight is, that's what it takes.
Yeah. But the biggest thing there being discussed is the boundaries of his land. I mean, so it could be the case that as he gets farther from it, he loses power. I think that's reasonable. I don't know how possible it is for him to leave his land or not.
Yeah, because it could be just actually impossible for him to physically cross that boundary, because he is tied to that place.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the spirit of that forest, and this is the furthest extent of his power. And because of the nature of what he is, whatever that is, wherever he is, he has authority. But if he is not a place where he has authority, then he cannot be there.
Yeah, he's an enigma. And that's like the first word that Tolkien describes in this entire book of his letters. Sorry. That's like the first word that Tolkien uses to describe him, is as an enigma. Mm-hmm. And also and this is perhaps some good insight too, as the spirit of the lost countryside of Berkshire and Oxford. That I think coupled with everything else we've just said is a good way of understanding Bombadil, and to get inside the mind of the author, even if you understand, well, trying to be in the mind of that author, that he didn't have Bombadil fully figured out. It made an attempt, which I read you, And it wasn't necessarily his only attempt, but they were attempts. And that was it.
Just based on how I read the story, Tom Bombadil feels like a character that was sort of thrown in on a whim and kept because he just seemed right to be there. I don't know why I put him in there, but I can't imagine the story without him.
He precedes the Lord of the Rings. Tolkien mentions that the place where Bombadil first appears is in a newspaper in 1933. Hey, he's been in character in Tolkien's head for a while.
In like a short story or something.
Yeah.
And he actually did write The Adventures of Tom Bombadil.
Mm-hmm.
It's someplace in the greater lore of Middle-earth.
Yeah, but if you understand a bit of Tolkien's mind and his description of Bombadil as the spirit of the vanishing countryside, yeah, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense that he would have been in his head for a long time in one form or another, and mysterious all the same.
Well, because one thing we all certainly know about Tolkien is that he hated industry.
Not a fan.
He hated deforestation. He hated factories and that horrible black smoke that poured from their smokestacks. He hated modernity, basically. If there was ever a man who actively despised the time in which he lived, it was Tolkien. He was so cranky, but also so loving and kind and lovable.
Yeah. The map is hell, as he said in one of his letters. He's
Well, I
like
think that's
panicking
just
trying to get it
that's
done.
just because he hated making maps. Like everybody, when you have something you love doing, there will always be an aspect of it that you despise.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with people, you have people you love. There's something about that person you cannot stand. Tolkien hated making the maps for the Lord of the Rings.
Could never get him right. In his own estimation.
I've tried making maps as well. I feel his pain. As a part of world building, there is nothing more mind-shattering than trying to make a map for a place that doesn't actually exist.
It's a different type of imagining, right?
You have to bend your brain in ways that nobody who has never tried to do it can do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they make AI tools for that now. Because authors are like, no, this hurts too much. This hurts my brain. And it amazes me that Brandon Sanderson has done that as many times as he has. And that Robert Jordan did as too.
True. But at least my sense of Sanderson's maps, the few that I've seen from the books of his I've read, is that they're simpler than the Lord of the Rings was. Like, we have a city, and the effective world is split into the north section, the south section, the west section, and the east section, whatever the names of those actually were. South, I forget.
Remember, we only see what's published. We don't see the entire thing that has worked.
Well, yeah. But, it's just the scope of the world that's set forth in it.
Yes. How many pages of the Fellowship are maps? Isn't it like there's 8 pages maybe that are maps? Because there's a broader map of Middle-earth that takes up 2 pages. Now I'm thinking of my copy here. There's a broader map of Middle-earth that takes up 2 pages. And then there are pages of every part of Middle-earth. Like there's a map of the Shire in general, and then a zoomed-in map. Basically, it's Middle-earth, and then zoomed in, and then zoomed in, and zoomed in over here, and zoomed in over here. Which I think is Tolkien's Achilles heel as an author, is like... And this may have also been publishers demanding, no, we need maps of that area because we need to know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
People need to be able to reference it because apparently people are going to read a fantasy epic like a book of history.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how many of those maps were afterthoughts or just extra things added into later editions.
Well, the edition that I have is based on the original first edition of The Lord of the Rings.
They threw a bunch of maps in there?
As far as what's included, there's a lot of maps. And they are all done in Tolkien's hand because it's all exactly the same hand and same style that it's done. So I can see why he got frustrated with them.
Well, it's just time consuming.
And I have great hope that they're in heaven, but I'm sure his wife suffered greatly when Tolkien had to make maps. As I imagine he was in a foul mood when he was working on his maps.
All humble men have their vices. Who knows what his were, but I hope for his sake that those maps were largely done after the fact. He always talks about getting the map done. So.
Yes.
So I hope it was just the one.
And
that
I think
later
the map is the one that's behind you.
I would hope so.
And that it's not one that is a zoomed in version of.
No, that'd be the Silmarillion version potentially, and I'm not going to get into that, or whenever that was done, or even if he did it. But anyway, back to Tom Bombadil. So far, we've described him as the spirit that he is, and with various attributes of that. But when he's presented to us, he's presented as a man. He's presented as a man who has his yellow boots and his blue jacket for some reason. Who knows what. And there are more masculine and manly attributes of his that I would not have guessed about him until reading this. You know, when I first meet him, his priorities are basically, yeah, where are you guys going? You know, what's the matter? Do you know where I am? I'm Tom Bombadil, and don't crush my lilies. So, and that kind of sums up the way he is for the rest of it. He's very hospitable. He's very kind, like very, very hospitable, and he loves Goldberry. And his life exists to serve Goldberry. Mm-hmm. He's just trying to get her water lilies.
I went down to the river to get water lilies for my wife, the river daughter.
Yeah. And he's just, I don't know, if you read the section, and I would encourage anybody to do it, he's just a perfect husband to her in so many ways. Mm-hmm. It's clearly, again, exists entirely to serve her. Like, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her. In many ways, he's doing that.
She's also a perfect wife to him, because this isn't one-sided.
No, this is not. She is a perfect wife to him. But, yeah, I don't get the sense that he's doing all of these things necessarily for his own self-aggrandizement, you know?
No.
He does
or because it makes him feel good. It's just he does things because they're the right thing to do.
Yeah.
In his mind, anyway.
And one of the right things to do is please his lady. Mm-hmm. So, another right thing to do in his mind is to have a mowed lawn, which is amazing, and a trimmed hedge. I read that, I was like, wait, he has a lawn
and a hedge.
It's trimmed. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. And in a way, again, he's a proper master of his domain. Not as like, oh, I am the forest and the forest is me and I must let this thing grow forever, just as it were. No, he's adding an order to it that would not be otherwise. He built his house in it. He does destroy it constructively after a fashion.
He built his house. What is his house built of? It's not mud.
Nope. It's not pixie dust.
It's wood and stone.
Yep.
And he has a trimmed hedge, so he is not above harming something that is of nature.
Yes.
To make it look pretty. Like, this is my house. Nature's order will remain as nature's order, but this is my house, this is my order. And if Old Man Willow suddenly decided to bend over and knock out one of his windows and hit his wife in the teeth, you best believe that tree's coming down. Because you have overstepped.
Just a bit. Just a bit.
You have forgotten who your master is.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll set fire to that black heart of yours.
Yes. You're now firewood.
Yeah. Or
which I believe he threatens to turn Old Man Willow into firewood at one point.
Might.
While he's trying to get the hobbits free.
You might. He just tells Old Man Willow, you should not be waking. Eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep. Bombadil is talking. It's like, I do not need to say more. And if
that's how I put my children to bed. Get a drink of water, go to sleep. Your father is talking.
Yep. That hit pretty home then. Pretty close to home. Yeah. He knows his domain and he is the master of it. He tills the earth and he keeps it.
Yeah.
And Tolkien didn't write him that way, I presume, to be like, oh, here's some paragon of masculine virtue. He's confused about what Bombadil is. But that's how he ends up.
Tolkien doesn't even know what Bombadil is. The closest comparison, like if we take Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, we don't know who either of them are. Mm-hmm. Because everybody wants to focus on Tom Bombadil because he's the more eccentric of the two. He's got the blue coat and the yellow boots and he talks funny. But Goldberry is just as enigmatic as he is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, where did he come from? They ask him about her, and all he says is, "Oh, she was sitting on a rock when I went to the river one day." And she is the river daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's the daughter of the river. Okay, so if I ask who is Goldberry, and the daughter of the river ought to be sufficient to answer.
Yep.
At least according to Tolkien. Just like when we ask who is Tom Bombadil, the master of the forest is sufficient to answer.
Yep. We can get glimpses of it in the sense that, like, for Goldberry, she has certain powers over nature, and her washing day is just a day when torrential rain comes down. Cleans out the forest a bit.
So it isn't just his nature, his power, it is both of them. That they both together. He is master of the forest, but she is his wife, which makes her its mistress. If in the forest Tom Bombadil is king, Goldberry is queen. So, alright, today is her washing day. It's just torrential rain today. Y'all stay inside, because you're gonna get wet.
Yep. And then I'll tell you stories for the entire day. And
yeah,
boy, is he a good storyteller.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also the mark of a good husband and a good father, is that
yes,
you can read your children stories.
If they were ever to have children, those children would be the best entertained children on the planet, having Tom Bombadil for a father.
Absolutely.
But the closest comparison that I can think of actually is on like the other end of the spectrum. Like if Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are over here for good, the closest comparison I can think of as to Tolkien doesn't exactly know what it is or where it came from. The closest comparison in the Silmarillion is Ungoliant, because he doesn't really know what Ungoliant is. She just came out of the void.
Mm-hmm.
She's a product of the void. She just appeared, and she's just hunger. So in a way, I think Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the same thing, technically, but products of a different place. So Ungoliant is a product of the void. What is the void? Emptiness. Lacking. So she's hungry. And she is a spirit of hunger. She is hunger itself. What is Tom Bombadil? Where does he come from? He comes from the forest. So I think Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, what is she? She comes from the river. She's the daughter of the river. In the same way that we can call Ungoliant a child of the void.
Mm-hmm.
So I think whatever it is, that the nature of the thing is so strong that it actually has created a being. Something about that river, the nature of it was so strong that it created Goldberry. And something about that forest, the nature of that forest was so strong that it had a spirit, and that spirit is Tom Bombadil, its master. Or that particular forest just needed a master, so Tom Bombadil showed up. But I don't know. In much the same way as Ungoliant exemplifies all the qualities of the void, Tom Bombadil exemplifies all of the qualities of the forest. The difference being, well, I don't know that there is much difference, because we can't hold Ungoliant's hunger against her, because it's her nature. Being of the void, she's empty. So, of course, she has nothing to do but consume.
It's a curious way to put it. My sense with all three of them is that they were sung into existence during the creation of the world.
Yes, they are there as all is as Iluvatar wills.
Yep. So,
and everything that is created is directly created by Iluvatar. So Ungoliant was created from the void by Iluvatar the way that Eve was created from Adam's side. The same way with Tom Bombadil in the forest and Goldberry in the river. They're all brought from something.
Yeah. There's the question. Read the Silmarillion, you'll get a sense of it. You know, Ungoliant is a creature of Morgoth in some sense. A creature of his noise. That he puts into the singing that makes the creation of the world. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate.
But, yes, somehow these spirits show up, right? Somehow they're there. Why? Ultimately, because at least in the case of Bombadil and Goldberry, yeah, why was that part of the song? Because the Ainur didn't know what they were creating when they were singing the song. Mm-hmm. They're blind at the time. Yeah, why were they in there? I don't know. Because I can.
Because that forest needs to be there. Yeah, God is the author. This is something Tolkien was very astute about, and a couple of authors have had the same sort of mind for since. Really, when you ask Tolkien, why did you write Tom Bombadil? because I wrote it that way is sufficient answer. So when every spring and summer my temper flares and I scream to heaven of why those stupid little red wasps exist, the response is because I made them that way, and that should be sufficient answer to me.
Yeah.
Or every summer when my dad is crying to heaven wondering why ticks exist, because they are the forest nemesis of my dad, the answer is because I made them that way.
Yeah.
And that should be sufficient answer.
Yeah, I don't get it, but they're there. I get
The
nothing
author
but-
writes the story that way, and you may not understand it, but it's still just fitting. For those of you who are more familiar with Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere than Dominic is, why does Hoyd exist?
Can't answer. Oh, no, wait,
I feel like if I was to ask Sanderson, he may have a more thought-out answer, and Hoyd may have another purpose within the Cosmere, but if I ask him what's the point of Hoyd, his response might be, because I wrote him, and because he belongs there, and that should be sufficient answer.
I'll have to ask you more about Hoyd later. I remember him from the Wax and Wayne books, but I don't...
Read the Stormlight Archive, then it'll make more sense.
The fact that he's in there confirms in my mind that he's more...
Hoyd is a character that shows up on every world in the Cosmere, and is spoken of by name. And he is the perspective of the Epilogue of Elantris.
He's in Elantris?
The Epilogue of Elantris, if I remember correctly, is told from Hoyd's perspective.
I need to read that. But anyway, we're getting into the weeds. Yeah, I want to say that there's good things we've talked about with the creation of Bombadil and other stuff. So I'm just going to cease to add to it. And I'll bring up a couple things regarding Tom that I think might polish off his positive attributes well. We've kind of talked on some of them. One, just to reiterate how good of a husband he is to Goldberry. There's this passage from one of the times where they're setting the table for the hobbits who are staying with them. Then Tom and Goldberry set the table, and the hobbits sat half in wonder and half in laughter. So fair was the grace of Goldberry, and so merry and odd the caperings of Tom. Yet in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other, in and out of the room, and round about the table. And with great speed, food and vessels and lights were set in order. I think, the two becoming one in marriage, I think, is represented quite well with that. Yes, the wife should be graceful and beautiful. Yes, the man is kind of you're an interesting creature. Like that type of person. I can say that because I'm a guy. That's all I really have to hope for myself anyway. It's like, if I end up in this type of setting, I am set and pleased as a peach.
Yeah.
But even if I am the odd one and my wife is the graceful one, I do want the two of us to move through life in such a way where it is a seamless dance. Can't really ask for more than that. And in far more things than just setting the table. Just
In a way, I should strive to be the Tom Bombadil of my neighborhood.
or at least of your house.
I suppose in a way what we can emulate is that, as men anyway, far limit our scope of power, and I think my authority, you not being married and having no children, being not yet the head of a family, you have no power or authority except over your own life and your own choices and your own free will.
My own domain is mine. Yes.
But mine, being husband and father, the domain of my power does kind of extend to the borders of my property, which is in my name but still isn't even technically mine because the bank owns like 98% of it.
Yeah.
At this point, because a 30-year mortgage is the thing. But I am Lord. My wife has not said this for a while, but every now and again when trying to impress upon my children the gravity of my words, my wife will say, "Daddy is king and his word is law." In my house I am king. I am Lord of this forest. It obeys my commands, and within these boundaries my word is law. And there are only certain circumstances in which my authority, which is both physical and spiritual, is to be surpassed. So a man's power and authority is great, but in a very limited scope. which is something I think that we have lost. I think we forget that the scope of our own power is limited because we have this very modern liberal notion of, well, my life is mine. I'm going to do what I want with it. And everybody else just better get out of my way. That's not how it works. The scope of your power is very strongly limited and is directly correlated to your station in life. So, like, my supervisor at work, outside of the office, nobody cares who he supervises or who he's in charge of. So his scope of authority extends even within the department. If he's not your supervisor, you don't have to listen to him. If he's not your direct supervisor, you don't have to listen to him unless told by your direct supervisor. It's like this in any workplace. The scope of your power, when you have power and authority, is limited. And we'll discuss this when we have a talk about general politics, but I think that is the key failing of liberalism. Because liberalism fails to put a limit over man's individual power, or over the power of the free will of the individual. Tom Bombadil is master of the forest, but master only of the forest. What does an orc care what he says? Or does? Because an orc serves a different master. Yes, Old Man Willow listens to him. Should Treebeard? For one thing, Treebeard and the other Ents are shepherds of a different forest. But should any tree in Fangorn listen to Tom Bombadil? No, because their master is Treebeard, and any other Ent. And this is, I think, something that people in general have forgotten. That even if the power within your scope is great, the scope of your power should be very, very limited. I only have absolute power within my home. So yes, within my home my power is absolute, but only within my home is my power absolute. Outside of my home, I am subject to the authority of the state, of the city in which I reside, which is something that I must impress upon my children and I must demonstrate to them with my actions. Don't cross the street against the light. Why? Because it's against the law. Because the city has told me not to. Yes, in our house Daddy is king, but Daddy is only king in our house. Under my roof no one commands me. But outside of it, I am subject to the commands of others. When a policeman flashes his lights, I have to pull over. Otherwise, really bad things can happen. To me.
Mm-hmm. And so it is good. It is good to be most concerned with what is under your power, under your control, under your influence. We talk about sphere of influence, right? As a way of, focus your attention on what matters most, which is close to you. Something that you can actually do something about. But we could talk about that as a scope of power as well.
Mm-hmm. And the state can tell me exactly how I can exercise my power under my roof. That is still within reason, I should say, so nobody thinks that I can do literally whatever I want as long as it's in my home, because that's also sort of a liberal thing. Now, that's more of a libertarian thing. Like, what does it matter what you do behind closed doors? Because what you do behind closed doors does actually affect what you do outside. So yes, if I abuse my children, then the state has every right to come in and take them from me and put them into the care of somebody who will care for them better. Because in abusing my power, I have just forfeited the right to it. Because ultimately, power and rule is a covenant between the ruler and the ruled. And if the ruler breaks that covenant, then it's perfectly reasonable to depose and replace him. Whether that's from a higher, an equal, or a lower authority, whatever the case may be, case-by-case basis. When a ruler has broken his promises, has broken his covenant to his people, they have every right to seek out a ruler who will uphold one. I'm getting into philosophy and theology of politics when we were just talking about Tom Bombadil.
Bit of a sidetrack, but okay, so how can we actually... Well, we've talked about it a little bit, but what does that mean for us practically? To me, it means you have your land that you're in charge of. You have your home that you're in charge of. You have the souls entrusted to your care. Now, do your job. In terms of things outside of that, I do not need to be as concerned with them. I do not need to gossip. I do not need to panic. I do not need to be all up in everybody's business. Because it's not my business, and I'm not there. I don't know what's going on. My job is to take care of myself and my family.
Tom Bombadil knows of the shadow that is growing from Mordor, but he also knows that dealing with it is not his responsibility. His responsibility is to care for that forest, and to govern it, and to ensure that it remains in the proper order of a forest. which is why he helps the hobbits on their quest, as far as the scope of his power will allow. Because stopping the shadow from the east is their power. It's their responsibility, not his. It's not your business what's happening halfway around the world. You don't need to be bothered by that. You could be aware of it, but should you be obsessing over it and thinking about it 24/7? No. Should you be obsessing and thinking about what's happening in Washington 24/7? No. Your responsibility is your own life and what is right in front of you. All you can do, all you can control is whatever it is you can actually control. Yourself, basically. Mm-hmm. Your own life. There are matters of kings, matters of nations, that should be left to kings and nations. And I think if you stopped thinking about them constantly, if you let yourself be aware of them, but didn't obsess over them, I think you'd be surprised exactly how little they actually directly affect your life.
Yeah.
So don't look at any news for like a week. Or if you do, or if you know anything about what's happening in the world in general, because I'm very sick of hearing people go, well, with everything that's happening in the world, people have been saying, with everything that's been happening in the world for like 10 years at this point. I'm tired of it. More than 10 years, to be honest.
For the entirety of the world.
But I'm talking about just like regular everyday people. Mm-hmm. Of like, well, why are you so sad? Well, with everything that's been happening in the world, I don't care. I do care. Because I should be able to feel for people who are victims of an earthquake in the Philippines. Or when those miners were trapped in Chile. However many years ago that was. What can you actually do? Pray. That's it. Mm-hmm. So pray and get on with your life. No, that isn't cold. That doesn't mean you don't care.
It means you care properly.
I care an extreme amount about my children and my wife. They are not at the forefront of my mind 24/7. What is at the forefront of my mind is whatever I'm dealing with at a specific moment, at any given time. But everything that I do, ultimately, is for their greater good and their benefit. So it's always a background thing. When they are at the forefront of my mind is when I am with them, and when I am being with them. So like Tom Bombadil, we should be aware of what else is happening, and maybe think about it every once in a while. Be aware of the shadow that's rising in the east, and then keep doing your job, and trust that everything will work out just fine. Because you do have to wonder, does Tom Bombadil's life actually change? At all?
No, it doesn't.
In The Lord of the Rings. No. No. Even when the Shire is overtaken by ruffians and Sharky, the Old Forest is as it has always been. Now, it would have been devastating had Sauron won, and the Old Forest would not have been spared. But that's not the point, because Sauron didn't win. So what are you worried about?
Yeah.
You're worried about some faraway threat that may or may not actually harm you? Worried about this law or that may or may not actually be enforced or directly even affect you? Peace. Reason and not blood. Breathe. And sing. Goldberry is waiting. It isn't that Tom Bombadil doesn't care about the rest of Middle-earth. He just cares about Goldberry more. Mm-hmm. And when I go home from a full day's of work, it isn't that I don't care about anything else. It's just that my wife is waiting, and my children are waiting. And that's the kind of life, it is ultimately the kind of life that everybody should strive for. It is, in a way, the ideal life. But Tom Bombadil can only be Tom Bombadil because of Frodo, and Aragorn, and Legolas, and Gimli. Men like Tom Bombadil can only care for nothing other than the land and their wives, because there are men who are willing to draw swords on the battlefield, and fight and kill and die. Everyone has their place in this world, as was illustrated in a wonderful poem from Longfellow that I read last week. You have yours and he has his. Tom Bombadil has his place. Frodo has his place. Everybody has their role in the story. It would be wonderful if we could all be Tom Bombadil, but not all of us can. I think a great many of us could. There are those who have to do more, who must. And it is not for us, for those of us who are privileged to be more like Tom Bombadil, to judge them or to look down on them, any more than Tom Bombadil looks down on the hobbits or on the men of Bree. for keeping to their own place in the world. I think I'm done.
But there was much wisdom in there. There was much wisdom that people need to hear. So well said, brother. Well said.
This whiskey is an oxymoron. It's called the Quiet Man, and then I drink a bunch of it and I don't stop talking.
Stole my thunder. Where do I go with this? Well, where I'll go with it. That's not actually that hard. Where I'll go with it, lastly, if I want to polish up his good attributes, things we can imitate about him in a way, is he does have contact with the outside world, and one of the people that he mentions is Farmer Maggot. He makes a great point about how plenty of his information from the outside world comes from Farmer Maggot. But
which would imply that they see each other frequently.
Yeah, it could. And I'm going to find the part of the book where it says this, because I would like to know that. Oh, there it is. There's a way in which he describes Farmer Maggot, and it's also evident to the hobbits that he respects him. He respects Farmer Maggot. And he says, there's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open. There's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both eyes are open. You know that old guy in your life that everybody gravitates towards? That dad, that grandpa? He has made an honest living with his life. He's worked the earth well, and he's kept it well. He's seen a lot of things. He's been very disciplined with his life. That's the only way you get to this state of affairs with your life. And from that discipline, and from that life, and from that work, from all the experiences you've had, you've gained a lot of wisdom. But not the loud, brash type of wisdom, but rather just the quiet wisdom that just usually is right, you know? And without talking, he gains respect. The type of person you want in the room. Whether he's going to make a comment once every half hour, or he's going to make you laugh with some joke. Or correct you when you need it.
Or when you give him the floor, he'll tell a story for 2 hours.
Yeah. He is that is a wise man. Oh, and by the way, both of his eyes are open. So he's not stuck in his ways. He's not a curmudgeon, even if he comes off as one sometimes. He's definitely not blind. He's definitely not blind to what's going on. He's very aware. And he's just present. He's very, very, very present to those around him. I think I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
I think I want to be like that guy. Like, I really do. And I think I can recognize in myself all the ways in which I am not that guy. And I want to be. And I just want to be. And so no wonder Tom Bombadil respects him. And yeah, that's a way in which we can emulate Bombadil too. Bombadil has a sense of what virtue is. I mean, of course he does. But yeah, that humble wisdom that we can all just hope to gain over the course of our lives. Don't have to be brash. We just have to be honest and work hard and do our job well. Exercise the kind of power that you talked about and not really be too concerned beyond that. Or be concerned beyond it insofar as it serves you to know so that you can better serve those within your power. Right? Like, that's the answer to how much news should I consume? What should I look at? What's good for your family? Plenty of it is not necessary. Like, it just is not. Some of it is. Some of it is. But only some. And that must be consumed with wisdom. And with both eyes open. In other words, with a filter. Like, the source I get all my news from, or, well, one of my news sources, any of them particularly. I mean, yeah, I'm going to read it through a filter or listen to it through a filter because I critically think. Maybe that's going on. Maybe that's not. I don't know. He says he is. He says that this is going on, which means he says this is going on. Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Back to my life. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but...
No, that's kind of the way we should be reacting to it. And that's the way people reacted from news from Washington for the longest time. Yeah, there's a scene in the movie Hondo where John Wayne's character Hondo Lane is an Indian scout. One of the other Indian scouts asks this young, fresh out of West Point cavalry lieutenant who the president is now. Now, who's the president now? And he says, Ulysses S. Grant. And it's just, like, this guy doesn't even know who the president is at the moment. And these days, I don't know that anybody since Teddy Roosevelt's presidency could really fathom not knowing who the president is. But there were times in the history of medieval Europe that you didn't even know your king's name. You knew the guy directly above you. Mm-hmm. And you may know the guy above him, but you don't know the king. Because who cares?
Exactly. Who cares?
Who cares who the king actually is right now? And how much does that actually have an effect on your life? And I do wonder how much the direct effect on our lives actually is based on who the president of this country is. Because your responsibility as a citizen of this country is to vote for whoever you think is best in whatever position it is you're voting for. So just vote and trust that whoever you voted for will protect your interests and leave it at that.
If you've done your research on them, your prudent research around, election season, as it were, then, yeah, I don't have to think about it too much during the course of the year. I mean, I should, in the sense that I should know certain things, right? Because there are things that affect me, but it's very fair to ask the question, how does this affect me? And that story about that soldier, who's the president now? Well, it's Ulysses S. Grant. There's a charm to that. Mm-hmm. And the charm would be broken if the soldier then followed that up with, well, what policy did he enact yesterday? Or what was he up to yesterday? What did he say at his press conference? No, the charm of that is perfect in that he asks who the president was, he finds out, end of conversation, goes back to his life. It's in its proper place.
I wonder how much major things of politics actually do affect our lives and how much we only think has a direct effect on our lives because of how much media we consume, how much we actually pay attention to.
It's a very fair question to ask.
Sure, the prices of gas went up, and we all know why the prices of gas went up. If the price of milk goes up, there's a phrase that comes from the Kingkiller Chronicles, written by Patrick Rothfuss. It comes up frequently in the first book, The Name of the Wind. It's just, now what does that have to do with the price of butter? Astoundingly simple, yet we all know exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Now what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, there's a nuanced answer to that, but it's an excellent question to ask.
What does that have to do with the price of butter? You should only be concerned with the things that directly affect you and those around you.
What matters most should consume the most part of your life and the most part of your mind. Yeah.
At least in theory, the Shire falls under the jurisdiction of the Dunedain. What does a hobbit care who is chief of the Dunedain?
There's a way in which I'll describe this, and I'll just use Tom's storytelling to make this point for us. At one of the points when he's telling stories to the hobbits, he basically described his words, as kind of recounted by them in generalities, cover more or less the entire history of Middle-earth, or at least enough of it, and it takes a paragraph. And the way in which it's described is perfectly frames up his mind and how we should frame things through how they affect us, how they affect what our sphere of power is. Green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire on the red metal of their new and greedy swords. There was victory and defeat, and towers fell, fortresses were burned, and flames went up into the sky. Gold was piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them. And the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over all. Sheep walked for a while biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. And he continues on for a bit more. Tolkien does to talk about, how the Barrow-wights came in, but not much more. Wow, so you just described a long period of time where the young sun rose, and walls were built and walls came down. Fortresses were built and fortresses were burned. Armies succeeded, armies defeated, and you just,
You just did that in a paragraph.
Yeah, it just happened. I just kind of observed it, because most of my time was spent taking care of my forest, taking care of my woman, Goldberry, bringing her water lilies. And so, this is going on with the mounds now,
And that's happening right on his doorstep.
Yeah. There's all these grand cosmic events, and it's as important to say, sheep nibbled on the grass on the hills for a bit and then stopped. Then they were bare. Yeah. Because that actually kind of matters. Like, that matters to him more than who the King of Gondor is.
Yeah.
Because who cares?
And in the land where the Barrow Downs now are, Tom Bombadil has seen kingdoms rise and fall. He's seen men go to war, seen fortresses be built and collapse, which that does not happen in a day.
Oh, no.
It takes decades. And now the way that the story is written, this is part of Tom Bombadil taking an entire day to tell stories because it's Goldberry's washing day and nobody should go outside because you're fixing to get wet.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual story that Tom Bombadil told was probably in greater detail, but the fact that Tolkien only spent a single paragraph on it serves to do one of two things. One, to speed up the story, and two, to illustrate just of how little importance all of that actually is. Because if you're reading The Lord of the Rings and you read that paragraph and then go, wait, I want to know more about that, then you're there for the wrong reason. If you, 80 years ago, are writing to Tolkien, demanding to know more about what happened in the Barrow Downs, then you missed the point.
Mm-hmm. That'll be revealed in time, but that's not the point of Bombadil's existence. It's just not. It just ain't. He's there, he's seen it. That was interesting. I got my forest, and Goldberry is waiting.
So, because we need to wrap this up because sleep is important, what all have we taken away from this conversation? We ought to love our wives, the way Bombadil loves Goldberry, and serves her. We ought to care for our fellows the way he cares for the hobbits. Welcome the stranger, as it says in Scripture. Care for the earth the way he cares for his land. Maintain order, but to not impose a disordered order. Maintain the order of Bombadil, not the order of Sauron. And be like Farmer Maggot.
There's a reason he respected him.
So it isn't that we should all be like Tom Bombadil, it's more that we should be like the man Tom Bombadil respects.
I think
Like
that's
Farmer
the best
Maggot.
we can do. I think it's the best we can do. Bombadil has his own ways in which we cannot emulate him, which I would largely just boil down to it's the nature of his spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you can't help but be entranced by him. If you read the book like I did this time, I mean, man, it's beautiful. You should want to be like that after a fashion. And even in this course of this conversation, thanks to your wise words once again, I find myself seeing less negatives in him than I once did. And like, wait, that is more possible to emulate directly than it would be otherwise. So go think about that this week and sing a song while you do it. And we'll see you next time.
Hey down, derry down, hey Bombadillo. Tom Bombadillo, and Goldberry is waiting.